Hello, welcome to episode 81 of Learn and Become podcast. We all know English is important, but do we know how English became that important? Do you know what makes English different all of the other languages? And why is English what we know of it today? That's the main part of what we'll be talking about in this episode. But before we started, I actually want to start with a quote from text by The Guardian that says, "No language in history has been used by so many people or spanned a greater portion of the globe." So this sentence is very interesting. And it also says, it is the language of global business, the internet, science, the stellar navigation, and avian. So it's pretty much saying that English is the most relevant language nowadays. Do we know why? And do you know how English became that important? We were going back in history to talk about what makes English the most relevant nowadays. And one curiosity, did you know that there are more than 6,000 languages? That's a lot. And only one, English, is the language that connects everything. In the same text, some people mentioned in the text call English the central language or super central language, which is like the language that connects everything, that is the responsible to net everything, which is really cool about it. But the first thing is, why is English so relevant? We go back in history, the key information for it will be England, which is why the language is called English. Pretty obvious. With the colonization, with the process, people from England started going to different places, such as the United States, Australia, and other places like those. And this process was fundamentally important. And if I'm not mistaken, from the 14th century to the 19th, 17th century. So for a couple of centuries, England was very dominant. They were always expanding, conquering new pieces of land and new areas. And that was the beginning of what we know today English is and English means in the world. But there was a second step which changed everything. Because if we think about that, also Spain was also very dominant. So was France. They also expanded to different countries, regions. For example, South America, pretty much, not pretty much, it's actually literally every single country in Latin America except Brazil speak Spanish. And also countries in different areas of the world, Central America, for example. But Spain didn't have the impact England had with the language. Neither had France, or Italy, or any other European country that colonized. But England did. So if we go back in history, there has to be a point where it connects from being a language of a country that was a colonizer to becoming the language that is so dominant in the world, such as English now. And the point is, we're talking about a few centuries ago, maybe 17th, 18th century, maybe up to 19th century, where English began to expand a little more, and not a little more, a lot more and some different Englishes began to rise around the world. Uh, but the key factor, thing that made English be what it is today, was something that is so natural for us nowadays that we don't even stop to think about. If you think about good countries, if you think about the best countries in the world, probably one of them, if not the most important that will come to your mind, is the United States. Probably not the one. And the United States, in the last century, mostly, and of course, it still does it nowadays too, is the most influential country, culturally speaking, both in media and also, for example, music, movies, Hollywood, everything. Pretty. But also companies. All of the companies, they want to do business with the United States or businesses and companies from the United States. And that was a key factor to make English what it is nowadays. But it's not the most important. We'll talk a little bit more about the United States factor. But there is one thing that changed everything and made English the most impactful language in history. Because if we think about, for example, the Roman Empire, they were massive. They had they were great. They expanded through different places of the world. They conquered many places and all of it. But people don't speak their language anymore. Why? There is one key factor that we'll get to it here. That changes everything. That changes the way language works for good. For good in this context, I mean like forever. Changes the game completely. But the United States, throughout the last century, it became so incredibly important because of media, pretty much, entertainment, because music, movies, series, and all of the media format. There's even a research that shows, if you Google the top 100 movies, most of them will be in English, and not only that, but they will be from the United States. So they will be in English and American English, which, if we think about, is not the primary way English. It is a variation of the first English, if we that. But it is the most popular nowadays because of this. Also, if you read, we mentioned content like media, entertainment. We also mentioned the companies. All of the companies around the world want to do business with companies that are from English speaking, especially the United States. Not only that, because of all of the cultural influence in the way English impacted the world, right now companies from different countries, when they do business between themselves, they will use English, even though none of them or neither of them have English as a primary language. For example, if a Brazilian company, is doing business with a Spanish company, they will not talk probably in Portuguese or Spanish. Most likely, they will have all of their nations, which is a result of what we're saying. But the key point is, because of its supremacy and dominance in all of the media, English became popularly known and used the most influential language in the world. Um, if we think, for example, for a second about Michael Jackson or Elvis Presley, the Beatles, which is not from the United States, it is from England, but it's one of the most important bands that there has ever been. All of those guys, they influenced a huge amount of people, not only to learn English to sing their songs, but also as people. A lot of people wanted to speak English, wanted to learn English because their heroes did it, because Elvis Presley did it, because Michael Jackson did it, Beatles, and all of the artists that there's so many, I can't name all of them. Those are just three examples that popped up. And they're not even artists, but that's how it went. A great example, I could be wrong in that one, but if I'm not mistaken, jeans, they got popular because of the Beatles, and everybody wears it. We don't know where it came from, but it came from an initial influence of somebody. Or and the same goes to the language. A lot of people got influenced by it, and things started to shift based off of influence. And it affected everything. But not only that, as we're saying, there's also like the business part of it. Companies were negotiating with each other. And when we think about media and entertainment, we're also talking about money. Like, think about all of the money that goes around a company such as Hollywood and how influential it is worldwide. From the gear they use, like the equipments, the tools, all of the things they do, also to the brands and to clothes and even food and everything. It's almost like a huge net that one thing is connected to, and things started to uh, shift towards the language, towards English. But there is another point that's very important, which is science, medicine. Researchers from over the world, they need to have a way to communicate with each other in a common language, so that if somebody discovers an important thing in China, they're able to communicate with people in Africa, Europe, in the Americas, China, and all of the continents, everybody. And that all goes English. So also in the research of the movies that I mentioned, they show that more than 80% of the most important articles, papers in the world, they are written in English, which shows again how important they are. And even if we talk about things like the international organizations, like for sports, or like ONU and all of the WHO, like the World Health Organization, and like everybody, literally everyone uses English as the bridge that will connect places, and that will make communication better. Or maybe not, better wouldn't be the word, that will make it possible, which makes it better, because if it's possible, how can it? Anyway, but that's not even the main point that I want to come to touch, and that will change completely the game and the way English affected society and lives, and changed the way language works forever. I've mentioned that in the 20th century, English was very important because of its influence in various ways. But in the 20th century, one of the biggest, if not, I'll say the biggest uh, thing or the biggest invention from modern society was happened in 20th century, which was the internet. The internet changes everything when it comes to communication. Computer and the internet, they were first developed in the United States. Of course, it's in English. Because it is in English, in the whole world, everybody literally in every single country use internet as a way of communication, of entertainment, of resources, of tool to work. English changed everything when it comes to communication, and it is the most important language right now, not only because of its popularity and influence through media and through businesses and medicine and science, but most importantly because of technology, more specific of the internet. Because of the internet, people learn English or they use English as a tool to create new stuff, to work as a programmer, developer. And that connection made the first step we mentioned about the influence through media. It made it much easier, much quicker, and much better. I started learning English something like 10 years ago. Uh, and then, like 10 years ago, it was harder than it is right now to consume, to find, and to content. 10 years before that, it was almost impossible for you to find stuff in English unless you bought a book or bought a CD, a DVD, or some sort of uh, uh, some sort of tape. I don't know, but 20 years later, we're talking about 2002, 2003. It changed drastically. And with this change, the impact and the importance of English has increased so much. Again, culturally speaking, through media, through movies, music, businesses, medicine, everything, science, but also through content in the last years, especially, where every day people are creating more content, they are putting out more things, and that enables us to find more information easier than ever before. And that brings us to why English is the global language, why English changes the way communication happens, and why everybody wants to learn English. Who wouldn't want to speak the language that connects, bonds everybody, and that will place you a step further, a step ahead of everybody else? Think about it. A person that doesn't speak English will earn less money in their job than a person that doesn't speak English will have access to less information, resources, books, materials, songs, movies, and everything. That and also connection to, because of all of that we've just mentioned. Person that does speak English speak, will have the possibility to connect with a lot more people than the person that, to measure that worldwide, about I think 200 or 300 million people, I mean, speak Portuguese, sorry, which is my mother tongue. About a billion people speak Chinese, Mandarin, which is the language that's, I think it's the most spoken language as a first, it is for sure the first language. But a curiosity, not everybody in China speaks Mandarin Chinese. There are many dialects. But native English speakers are about 300 to 400 million, which is almost like double the as a first language. But we consider native and non-native speakers, the number of English speakers is something like almost 2 million people, 1,500,000 people. It's insane. It is like huge number. And if speaking Portuguese, you can connect to one person. Speaking English, you'll be able to connect to 10 times the 10 people, 10 times the amount of people you would if you only spoke Portuguese. And that goes around everything. So that's why people that speak English have higher salaries. Why people that speak have more opportunities. Why people that speak have more access or connections. Because indeed, they can connect, they can be in touch, they can have access to more things, more people. And that changes everything, changes the game for you, regardless of the industry, regardless of the hobbies you have, of the content you need, training you need. English will be the language, will open like most doors for you and the most possibilities for you to walk through and change your life, reach new levels, career, everything. I hope that has helped you understand how English became what it is today and why English, as they say in this text I've mentioned in the beginning from The Guardian, no language in history has been used by so many people. It is because English is not only the language of countries like England, Australia, but it is the language of internet. And if you're listening to me right now, it means you internet, probably use the internet, a bunch of stuff. As a result, English is important. You, for those who come after you, and congratulations, time and energy in your future, practicing and by your ability to communicate language that connects everywhere. I mean, everyone and everything, everywhere. Hope this episode has been interesting and helpful to you somehow. If you like it, share it with a friend or somebody that wants to practice, likes to. Thank you very much for being here. I'll see you in the next episode. Have a good one.